Welcome to the TomorrowZone Catalyst Podcast, where we are igniting innovation and following our curiosity. I'm your host, Deb Reuben. Today, I'm joined by Erich Dylus, founder of Varia Law, a firm at the cutting edge of law consulting and programming for autonomous technologies. Erich serves as external general counsel to API 3 Foundation, which is revolutionizing how APIs connect to smart contracts. And he also developed Lexcro, a non-custodial smart contract escrow protocol that's reshaping digital transactions. Before launching his own firm, Erich practiced aviation and equipment finance law at Vedder Price. Today, we're going to dive into the future of AI, blockchain, and legal frameworks that will shape autonomous systems for the future. Erich, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That was quite an intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it helps to collaborate with AI when you want to find out about people.
Nice. Right on brand.
Yeah, totally. So we met while I was chairing the Equipment Leasing and Finance Association's Innovation Council. So when you were working with Vedder Price, that's when you and I became acquainted. And I always appreciated your unique perspectives in our various explorations of technology and innovation trends and what specifically they could mean for the equipment finance industry. I'm still nerding out on all of that kind of stuff. And I'm really looking forward to catching up with you today on the show to find out what you're doing now, trends that have caught your attention, and take a look at some of the possibilities that you might see for the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my musings on law and technology were kind of out there then, and they've only gone farther afield since then. So
love it.
Talk about just about anything.
Love it. All right. Well, this is going to be fun. Let's just have fun and geek out a little bit. So before we dive into all that, though, I'd love if you could just share a bit about your backstory and your current focus. So what are some of the highlights that led you to the work that you're doing right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, you gave a great intro and very complimentary. I appreciate it. I think if I were to kind of summarize my backstory, it would be that I was always interested in technology and sort of complex agreements in general. And that led me to the law, and that led me to equipment finance and aviation finance and different bespoke, complex international and domestic deals. And in the process, when I was a law firm associate, I noticed a lot of things that in the processes, not necessarily the law, in the sort of commercial processes that were just a little strange and inefficient and just due for an update, if not a removal of some of the third parties in general. And it's not to say that the third parties involved aren't valuable. Of course they are, for their insight and their experience and compliance and things like that. But when it comes to sort of ministerial administrative actions, I just kind of saw where code could just help make everything more efficient and faster and more secure. And that really led me down a path. And that path is kind of where I am now. So now I do sort of half and half legal work and programming work.
That's so cool.
Thank you. And the example I like to give is, back when I was an associate, I would have some deals where closing was dependent upon the physical location of an asset, and whether that was a registration thing, a tax thing, whatever it might be. And that is just the perfect example of demonstrating where you can code in an objective condition to something happening, the GPS coordinates of an asset, and B, where third-party costs and frictions come in and really jack up the price of a deal. Because if it happens after banking hours, then you have to recalculate rates and you have to, get everybody on the closing call again. And just things like that really add up quickly. And to me, that is fairly easily fixed as long as you can get both sides to kind of, progress in their tech stack a little bit. So, you might use a smart contract to hold funds, and then you might encode a condition that releases those funds. So
that's a really cool use case.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's applicable in so many industries, and so it's just within equipment finance, it's applicable in so many different ways. And back then, one of the things that was really holding it back was it's funny because it's not really the understanding of the technology that really would hold people back, because how many people understand how Fedwires or ACH really work? Like, not many. It's the complexity and the regulatory aspect of getting on and off blockchains. And getting on is really not a big deal. There are plenty of payment APIs. It's really the off ramp that has been a kind of gating to a lot of this technology just happening behind the scenes, so to speak. So like a lot of the complexity being abstracted. And I think in the coming years that'll get a little bit easier. But yeah, so that's a very long-winded way of saying like that was sort of my professional interest and sort of idea of where things were going. And from there, I went from being interested to just needing to relearn how to code. I did some back in the day, but nothing like this. So I taught myself Solidity, which is the primary language used with Ethereum smart contracts.
I remember when you were doing that, you set a goal for yourself. If I recall right, you said you were going to do 100 days of coding.
Yes. Yeah. It's sort of like it's a common framework for, or at least it was, for people learning a new coding language. It's like any sort of it's like a New Year's resolution, right? Like you need to document what you're doing and where your pain points were and what you want to do tomorrow and that sort of thing. And it was a great exercise that, it got me focused and really, paying attention to details. And it's funny because if I were to do this again today, it would not be anything like that process, because there's no way you wouldn't use ChatGPT or Claude alongside your learning process today.
I would love to dive into that a little later in our conversation, because I'm very curious about learning and staying on top of these technologies. But I'll let you finish your story here.
Sure. I'm getting to the end here, I swear. But basically, I set out on my own initially just as GC of API 3, as you mentioned, and doing some coding on the side and just kind of getting my chops in order, and things kind of blossomed from there. I mean, there were a lot of very particular products. Crypto is so complex and so misunderstood, and requires a pretty good grasp of what's happening under the hood to really advise legally what can be done and that sort of thing. And frankly, I just got better at coding and eventually started building things for my own use as my firm and also for clients. So that progressed to the escrow product you mentioned called Lexcrow, which is a completely ownerless framework for deploying escrow contracts. And I've built some other little things on the side, and most recently working on an offline data anonymization tool for enterprises that use AI to kind of protect their confidential information before it's sent to the giant server farms.
That's really cool. I want to learn more about that.
Of course.
That is awesome. So I'm curious, so many questions. One of the things I love about your background is just how diverse your interests are. I mean, I don't often run into people in the commercial equipment finance space who are expert in law and business application, but also coding, like deep into the weeds on technology, how it works, but then how it practically can be applied to solve problems in this business. So that's fascinating in itself. I'm curious about that learning journey that you mentioned in your backstory, because you think about all of the changes that are happening today, whether it's a new AI tool. I mean, like 3 massively crazy super powered models have just been released within maybe the past 7 to 10 days. I can't even keep track anymore. It's like, AI is disrupted. Oh, AI is disrupted again. What's the disruption of the day? So how do we, stay on top of this? And I love that learning journey that you went on a few years ago when you were doing the 100 Days of Code. And you said that you would do it different today. So when you did it back then, were you doing it all by yourself or were you a part of a group? And then how would you rethink that today, given all of the new possibilities with technology to learn?
Yeah, I mean, so that was almost 5 years ago, which is crazy.
And that's like 30 years in tech time today.
Yeah, it's like shockingly manual.
We see 5 years of progress happening in the space of 3 days right now.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, back then, basically my process was there was a tutorial website, very basic tutorial website, and these exist for every language, that I did like a couple times over, probably, before, to the point where I would do it until I wasn't making any mistakes. And then the thing with smart contracts is that it's a norm to not use smart contracts unless they've been verified on chain. So unless you can actually see the code, it's just, why would you risk using something that's closed source? So because of that, you can go to a block explorer and say, this is a type of smart contract I'm interested in learning how it works. You can just read it, look at it. Now you can copy and paste it into ChatGPT and say, please break this down function by function, explaining how this works, where state has changed, where yada yada yada, everything bullet point by bullet point. Whereas back then I was really looking brick by brick, so it was slow, but it was definitely thorough. There's a benefit to that too.
I can see the benefit in kind of deconstructing and reverse engineering something like that to learn, reading code line by code line, but what an amazing capability to have a tool that can actually give you explainability and speed up that process a little.
Right. And the other thing is, I mean, smart contracts some of them are pretty short because you want them to, there's some security and simplicity. And then they also differ from, let's say, a language like Python that has, one of the most popular in the world, and it has these extensive libraries that you just kind of import to your project, and they just kind of work, and you just kind of roll with it. But you don't really know what's happening under the hood unless you really, really look. That's just not the case with smart contracts. Like, you look at all of the code to make sure it all jives. So,
there's a lot at stake in a smart contract.
Yeah.
Can we back up just a little bit? Can you explain for listeners who might not be as familiar, just kind of the kindergarten explanation, what is a smart contract?
Definitely. So a smart contract, I'm just going to stick with the tried and true analogy here, even though I'm not a huge fan, but the tried and true analogy is that a smart contract is a digital vending machine. If you input something, the output will be as designed. And the difference between smart contracts and regular programs, applications, is that you're not trusting a single server or host of the vending machine software. That vending machine software is distributed among thousands and thousands of nodes across the world, and they come to a consensus on well, this is definitely not kindergarten, but just a quick aside. Let's just say that the nodes communicate with each other in a way to ensure that what you're doing is valid. So smart contracts are very unique in that they typically, there are always exceptions, but typically they're made in such a way that they can't be deployed, or they can't be changed after they're deployed. So there's some security in that, but there's also, of course, risk. Whereas normal programs or websites, you can upload a new version of your software at any time, and it replaces the old version, and the end user might not know. They're kind of at your whim if you're a host of that kind of software. So smart contracts are very powerful because of that immutability, and they're also risky because of that. So they often get audited by security firms before being deployed and used, and you wouldn't necessarily just use code that another person has created without some sort of review first, whereas you might take that risk with other programs.
That kind of really underlines the power of what you bring to the table, really, because not only do you understand what's going on in the code, but you understand the legal implications of it, as you might be collaborating with a security expert or something.
The idea, hopefully, yeah.
It's interesting. Whenever I talk to you, it's never only a single technology that we're exploring or a single innovation trend. I've noticed just in talking with you that you tend to deal with the intersection of multiple interesting technologies and trends. So I would love to explore a little bit of what you're seeing and what may be catching your curiosity right now in terms of what's possible now. And we've talked a little bit at the intersection of AI and blockchain and crypto. What are the new possibilities that you're seeing that could happen even today?
Yeah, I think this is a really good segue because so as I was just talking about how smart contracts are decentralized when they're hosted and used, and they're often simple and objective, and require a lot of security for their objective output. AI is perfectly complementary in a lot of ways, so it kind of fits like a puzzle piece in that AI is generally centralized. Generally, you're relying on a huge server farm somewhere that is controlled by some corporate entity. Or if you use an in-house AI, it may be your corporation that controls the AI. And much more importantly, it's very subjective. So you can get vastly different outputs for the same input. If you ask even the same AI, if you ask it a question multiple times, you're going to get different answers. And that has obviously its pluses and minuses. It's great for creativity and idea generation, and all sorts of things, bug fixing, as I know all too well. But the intersection of AI and crypto is very interesting because they're so complementary. They're actually designed to use each other very well. So you can envision down the road, as I do a lot of down the road envisioning, but if you were to really empower an AI assistant or AI agent to transfer funds on your behalf or on your company's behalf or on its own behalf, I don't know about you, but I do not foresee major banks allowing AI agents API access to accounts.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, they do it on like a case by case basis.
I'm having a hard time envisioning that even personally.
Yeah, so like there's ways around it. Like you could give AI like your Venmo credentials or even your bank credentials, but like I personally would not. So
yeah, I just get kind of cringy if I even think about that right now.
Yeah. But
you think about where agents are at.
right. And there's a long way to go. But
and also like the lack of predictability. If we're talking about generative AI, like you said, you can't expect the exact same predictable output given the same input. And to me, that makes the whole agent opportunity still a bit risky.
Yeah. Like I don't want an AI travel agent booking me on a 3-leg flight in the middle seat for like,
right.
Granted, you can be more specific in the prompt, but anyway, this takes me away from my original point, which was that you're going to want to very strongly parameterize what funds AI has access to. And frankly, crypto is perfect for this because you give it its own address, its own controlled private key. No one accesses that private key other than the AI. And it can implement code as it goes for how those funds are used and how transactions are made. And that can include deploying smart contracts for those funds to be used. And granted, this is not, I wouldn't say this is something people are doing today, but it's very easy to imagine because what people are doing today is using AI to just replicate applications locally on their own computers or in a way that mimics a paid service but for free, things like that. So this cross section of AI and crypto is it covers a lot of bases in terms of how it can reduce operational costs for people and make things just faster and more efficient, because you can use AI to sort of automatically do the subjective things, and you can use crypto to automatically do the objective things. So there's a lot you can do there.
It's an interesting collaboration.
Today, I would say that AI is really just used along the edges, so to speak. So, I have some clients that are doing cross-border payment applications using smart contracts, and they'll use AI for some of the compliance stuff, or some of the bug fixes, some of the risk audits for some of the software, stuff like that. But I wouldn't say they're using AI to deploy smart contracts and things like that quite yet. But it will get there, is the thing. So it's just a matter of when.
Yeah. Well, and the tech is moving fast. If we just even look at what's happened in the past week or so, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm curious, whenever we talk about crypto and blockchain innovation, especially, in financial services space, you can't get away from a discussion about the constraints that we have to work within. And I just wonder, how do you see the regulatory landscape shifting as we look at crypto and blockchain centered innovations?
It is quite a shift. Granted, this administration is just getting started, but so I'm doing a little bit of guessing. But the last 4 years of the SEC, CFTC, Treasury was really, really difficult for developers, especially developers of technology that runs on its own and can be run peer-to-peer and can be run for purposes of privacy. And those attributes summarize crypto and AI quite well, frankly. So, it was a default of uncertainty and regulation by enforcement. And sort of because of that, if you're creating something, you want it to not resemble a regulated product as much as possible. So that led to a lot of incentivization of economic structures that weren't, reasonably profit generating, that didn't allow users to maintain privacy, that just things that were bad incentives. And in the meantime, we lost some of the features of these agencies that used to be so beneficial. So you used to be able to email or call a regulator and be like, I'm thinking of building something like this. What do you think? I think it might be exempted for these reasons. In this previous couple of years, I'm personally aware of some people that did that and then received Wells notices or investigations months later. And so the chilling effect is you really can't understate it. Like, people left the country, capital left the country, and what we were left with in the US were these idiotic meme coins. So for crypto
Yes.
and for AI, AI got consolidated into these megacorps, as you can see, which is kind of natural because you have to centralize processing power. But now the messaging is very different. The messaging is come back and experiment here. We want to lead the world in this sort of thing. And there are obviously pros and cons on both sides, but there are a lot of very optimistic developers now, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what might happen now with this radical shift in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Future's going to be interesting.
Yes, always is.
Well, I want to shift gears a little more and let's think about what's possible for the future. When we last spoke, you were talking about how you're doing some work on cybernetic organizations. Now that just sounds cool. That sounds totally Hollywood, Eric.
Yes.
But if you could tell us
did not coin
what that is, cybernetic organizations. But also you just casually mentioned, oh yeah, and I know space law. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know anybody who's into that. So what do you see like at the intersection of all of this? Autonomous software, cybernetic organizations, space law, because that's a big thing right now too. Where do you see things going? What's possible? What's
Yeah,
next?
I will clarify two things to make me seem much less cool, which is, first of all, I did not come up with cybernetic organizations. That's I think, I'm not sure who coined it. I think it might have been Metalex, but I'm not quite sure. But basically it just means legal entities using automatic processes by design. So what we've been talking about, really. So increasing efficiency, predictability, security by using, you know, AI enhanced processes, smart contract execution, basically delegating to code where you can.
So it's kind of like the agent plus vending machine
Yeah,
concept. You
definitely.
got like an autonomous thing that can do stuff that
Definitely
actually has an impact.
And I think one of the high profile examples of this recently has been this emphasis on tokenization of company stock or legal rights and privileges. And there's a lot of talk. I think the realities are going to be a little more constrained, but there's no doubt that tokenization provides a lot of benefits in terms of programmability and increased liquidity for these deals and these companies and that sort of thing. But yeah, that term is kind of all the cybernetic organizations is all encompassing, I think. So the space law thing, I really just took one class in space law, and I thought it was just so interesting because international law is already kind of a meme for lawyers. Do you really have law if you don't have international enforcement? Really? But space law is interesting because it's even more of a nightmare. Like the jurisdictional issues in space are crazy.
Yeah.
So
how do you figure that out?
yeah, you don't really. But as we're talking about AI and just the sheer amount of energy we're going to need in the future is astounding. And granted, there's a lot to be done in terms of safe nuclear, whether that's uranium or thorium, that can really provide a lot of energy gains. But if we continue on this, obviously we can't continue on an exponential path forever, but on this very high velocity path of needing a lot of computation for AI, you need a ton of energy and raw materials. And at some point, space is going to be a natural conclusion, whether it's a supply issue or an environmental issue. At some point we're going to just, the amount of resources we're going to be extracting is going to be, it's a lot. So, and this is it's appropriate that we're talking about space because I'm going to get really out there right now, but it's not difficult to see where these sort of resource capturing space missions need to be done by autonomous vehicles. And those vehicles need to transact and communicate peer to peer and make inferences and do things that imply the use of AI on board and perhaps smart contracts as well. Because why would you trust a single server to execute something in space? You would want decentralized.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just envisioning a future of these autonomous vehicles in space mining resources and using solar panels to power themselves and AI to guide them and smart contracts to transact with each other. That's just me.
That's a really cool vision of the future, though, where AI and smart contracts are coming together to enable autonomous exploration in space.
I definitely read a little too much Neil Stephenson, but I think this also is kind of relevant just for how international commerce is today too. I mean, a lot of these jurisdictional payment resource issues, they're not so far out. So
well, I mean, and you could extrapolate that to a use case here on Earth too.
Right,
if you think about an autonomous vehicle being its own agent, driving around, doing transactions without a centralized source controlling it. That seems like a possible use case.
Right. I mean, you don't need to leave Earth for the sort of trust and jurisdictional issues too. Just go out to sea. The maritime law is a mess. So,
and maybe that can be like the sandbox for what happens in outer space.
Offshore rigs, right?
So before we do our final question, where can listeners learn more about you, Erich?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. Personally, I don't really post much, frankly, because I never really know what to post. But my firm also has a LinkedIn page, Varia Law, and the website's varia.law. So, and I have email addresses all over the place too.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll include some of that in the show notes. Our final question, we ask this of everyone. Very curious to see how you would answer this. What is one thing that leaders can do today to shape a more awesome future?
Yeah. So, well, I've been talking about code this whole time. So, time to bring it back to the humans. So, I think it's just key to remember the human element, right? So, we're not going to be able to entirely rely on AI for many, many years. I think it's absolute malpractice to do so in the near term. I mean, the amount of times I've been gaslit by AI is incredible. I've received responses like I mistakenly relied on text that did not exist in that document. So there's going to be humans in the loop for the foreseeable future, and so I think the key is looking at what humans do well, and what, if you're a leader, what your humans do really well, and optimizing for that. So, what processes are super time consuming? Where do you put a lot of trust and expense in third parties that might be better handled by code? What do you really want out of whatever it is you're leading, and how is it improving your human situation? I think it would be my general thoughts.
I love that. And, that's our focus here is the human side of innovation. You just stated it so beautifully. Thank you, Erich, for sharing your inspiring insights and all the exciting stuff that you're into these days.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I hope it wasn't too heavy, but I had fun.
It was fun geeking out. So I think, there's so much talk about AI, but if you focus only on that one technology alone, you're missing the bigger picture of what's possible. And as we heard from you in this conversation, there are so many more possibilities at the intersection of multiple trends and technologies. But the bottom line is you can't forget to be the human in the loop. And, our judgment and curiosity and the things that make us most human are still going to be so important for the foreseeable future. So until next time, stay curious and choose to make awesome happen.